Now we will call on Dr. Stanley. He is a vet officer from the Fish Health Unit of the Fisheries Commission. And he's going to also tell us all we need to know about this topic. A teaser about that is saying that one of the major problems to be addressed in aquaculture is the prominence of antimicrobial resistance. And so on this note, I would leave the platform to Dr. Stanley, to do justice. Thank you very much, Dr. Stanley. You are welcome.
Hello, thank you very much, Dr. Boma. I'm happy to be here once more. Can the screen be shared, please? The administrator, I cannot share from here. I will be speaking on the topic, the role of the fish health units in this fight against antimicrobial resistance. So I was hoping I would hear Prof's presentation so that when mine comes, it will more or less sum up our approach to the issue. But I think it's still in line that I go ahead before Prof speaks. It's said in our local dialects that when an older person finishes bathing, then the water in the house is finished. So it is also traditionally right that I allow Prof to speak last. So when we talk of antimicrobial resistance, we start off with explaining what antimicrobials are. Okay. Now, we know that antimicrobials are a set of drugs or a group of drugs that are used to treat microbes. And microbes are organisms that cause disease that we cannot see with our eyes. So antimicrobials refer to all of those group of drugs that treat all those kinds of animals or organisms. There are quite a number of them. There are the worms, there are the fungi, there's also the bacteria. Okay, so when we talk of antimicrobials, we are talking about the antibiotics, the antifungals, the antimycotics, and those other drugs that are used to treat those, how do you call it, those pathogens, as we call them. But after a while, we began noticing that the use of these drugs, and of course the abuse of these drugs, led to what we call resistance, where now what used to be effective for some of these pathogens is no longer being effective. For example, if you had to take just about 50 grams of one particular medicine to treat a said disease, now you may have to increase the dose to be able to say about 100 or 150 or even 200 to get the effects that you would have had back then when we're using 50 grams. Another one too is that the drug no longer seems to work. So you will have to buy a much more expensive drug to treat the disease. So when we talk of antimicrobial resistance, generally, this is what we are talking about. It's a situation where the drugs that we use to treat certain diseases no longer work as they should, all right? So that's in general is what antimicrobial resistance is. I was hoping the slides would be up by now. Or perhaps you could make me a host again so that I share my screen from here. I think that may work. All right. So the fish health unit is the more or less the service delivery, health service delivery units when it comes to aquaculture. So we work with the Fisheries Commission of Ghana, and as part of our rules, we deal with disease diagnosis, disease treatment, and the others. Anything related to fish health or fish welfare, it's within our mandate.
Professor Adiolu is in our midst. Professor, are you here? Is Professor?
Yeah. Hello.
Okay. Professor is a professor of fish pathology. He is joining us from Nigeria. Professor, would you like to come in with your presentation and tell us all you would like us to know about AMR?
So I hope to make it brief so that I don't take much more of the time.
No, we have a lot of time. It's fine. Feel free, please. This is very important to us, so it's okay. Please take all the time you want.
All right. So I will continue by apologizing for the hitch. It happens sometimes. So I'm Stanley. I'm a vet with the Fish Health Units of the Fisheries Commission, and my area of operation is the northern sector, which is from the Ashanti, the Bonos, the Hafo, the Savannah to the northern part of Ghana. So I'll be speaking on the role of the fish health units in this fight against antimicrobial resistance. And this is going to be the outline. So aquaculture has been noted as one of the most promising food production sectors worldwide. And in Ghana, it started somewhere in the northern region, somewhere in the 1950s. And today it is known to be contributing about 3 to 5% of Ghana's GDP. And if you have a fair idea of the economics of Ghana's proportions in terms of GDP, this is pretty good. You know, I'm told recently the minister made a proclamation that as of last year, our exports from aquaculture was amounted to about 254 million US dollars only in exports last year. And one other point to note about the industry is resilience. You know, we recently suffered the infectious spleen and kidney necrotic virus outbreak on the lake. That was in 2018. And shortly after that, we've been able to increase our annual production by 71%, just over 3 years or so. So it shows how resilient we are as an industry. However, the patronage of veterinary services in aquaculture is low. Recently, I did a retrospective study of my cases over the past 20 months since that was up to January. And the cases were averaging about 1 case per month. Meanwhile, most of the time when you come to contact with farmers at conferences, at meetings, in town, and sometimes when they come to the office, they mention of episodes of mortalities that they've had before. And sometimes upon interrogation, you find out that they found some antibiotics somewhere and they started using. And for most of them, unfortunately, the period that is used and the dose that is used is really not what is supposed to be used. So gradually, you know that the abuse of antibiotics is happening. I think 2021, we also did, how do you call it, a compliance audit of biosecurity on most of our farms nationwide. I think the portions we left out were, in this report, were the northern parts, which later was done and included, and it still didn't show much difference from what we found in 2021, which meant that the compliance was generally low for our farms. So coupled with the bacterial diseases that are reported and the unguided use of antibiotics and the low patronage of vet services and the low compliance with biosecurity, it sets the stage for a very good, difficult fight against antimicrobial resistance. So what is antimicrobial resistance and how does it relate to aquaculture? So as I described earlier, antimicrobial resistance happens when germs like bacteria, I mentioned this fungal, there are the worms and those others, okay? The hemoparasites like malaria parasites, all of those ones are also part of the microbes. So I think a good example would be when some time past we used to use chloroquine. For some reason now we are using artesunates, artemether lumefantrine. That is one of the examples. Okay, so we have drugs that we used to work, but over time you realize that you may have to change it due to one reason or the other. So antimicrobial resistance happens where germs like bacteria develop the ability to defeat the drugs designed to kill them. So then they no longer are effective against those bacteria. And it often happens when antibiotics are abused or misused over time. So by abused or misused, let me just explain here. By abuse, I mean, for every drug, you're supposed to give it over a certain dose over a certain period of time. So if it's supposed to be taken, say, half tablespoon mixed with 5 kilos of feed, I'm just saying 5 kilos of feed to be given over 24 hours or over, say, 1 week, and you end up giving it for just 3 days, you are abusing it. The misuse aspect also talks about when you use it, even when you don't need it. So we have a lot of our cases where if we realize there's a water quality problem, they just need to change the water and the situation will improve. And then they go ahead and pump antibiotics in it. There are some arguments that if you give antibiotics in their feed, they will grow faster, as it has been proposed and being defended in the poultry sector. Some people have also begun to make the case for it in aquaculture that if you mix it with their feed, you grow faster, which I don't think has been scientifically proven. And even if it's been proven, the economics of it is something we have to still look into. So that's what abuse and misuse also stands for. Unfortunately, 90% of bacteria in the aquatic environment, that is in our ponds, in the lakes, in the sea, in most of those areas where we farm our fish, have been shown to be resistant to at least one antibiotic. So 90% resistance to at least one antibiotic agent. Now, with low compliance to biosecurity and high incidence of bacterial diseases, antimicrobial resistance is set to worsen in the country and in our industry. Now, we try to learn from other countries. So in the United States Center for Disease Control, they've done some studies and they found out that the US government loses up to 55 billion every year, dollars, not cities, 55 billion every year, just because of antimicrobial resistance. And if I remember correctly, 35 billion was due to the humans that were affected and could not go to work, and also the cost in care to treat those humans. So for the farmer, antimicrobial resistance is going to increase the cost of disease treatment, and it's also going to increase the cost of your production, because if you stock, say, 1,000, and you are going to lose more of it to disease and mortality, then your cost will go high because your returns will be reduced because of the mortalities. And therefore, the cost of doing business is also going to be increased. In the long run, what I'm trying to say is that antimicrobial resistance is not painting a good picture for the aquaculture industry. For humans, it may be a slightly different story because, well, if you don't take antibiotics, you seem to be okay. But even that, you may be consuming it from your meat or your fish or from some other source. But for the aquaculture industry, if we continue to dose them like that, very soon we'll have antibiotics that no longer work. And it means you only have to buy much more expensive antibiotics to treat the drugs, the diseases that you have on your farm. So what is the role of the fish health units? I mentioned we are the more or less the service delivery stroke regulatory institution that work with health and welfare of fish. So as part of our roles, these are the ones that I looked through and I thought relates well to antimicrobial resistance or the fight against this issue. Number one, we are trying to develop biosecurity management plans. We call them BMPs for fish farms. So for my area, we started with some big farms who are serious, and by serious, I mean are willing to practice some of these things. So we visit your farm, assess your risk, and also develop the management plan for you so that you can gradually be compliant when it comes to biosecurity. When you have biosecurity measures in place, you prevent diseases. And if you prevent diseases, you prevent the use of antibiotics. So that is one of the ways we are fighting against antimicrobial resistance. Number two, aquatic disease diagnosis and consultancy. So when your fish are dying, please don't call that so-called expert somewhere who doesn't seem to have any certification or any accreditation to be giving you any advice. Please, there are so many people who are going around, let me use the word, duping farmers. I've had reports of quite a few of them where they will charge you so much money only to come and put something like vitamin C in your ponds. So please, we are the ones to contact if you have any issue. The vets, there are 4 of us in the fish health units. You contact us, we will diagnose the problem for you. If it's a water quality problem, we will only tell you to change your water. And if there are anything you need to do, you can, to do that will prevent the use of antibiotics, will guide you. And if you need the antibiotics, we would also dispense some to you. Sorry, and also show you how it is done. Second, the third thing is also the prescription and the treatment guidance, which I've spoken about, and then vaccinations. So for vaccinations, we have some group of persons who have started the sale of vaccines for streptococcus, and we need to be able to regulate that activity so that the vaccines would, if you have vaccines against diseases, you'll be able to prevent the disease from coming anyway. So then you don't need to use the antibiotics. Then the last portion on the slide, I'm sure some others can also top up if I leave any out, is antimicrobial resistance research and also collaborations. And the collaborations, we collaborate with so many institutions, the EPA, the assemblies, the vet services, the labs, and more. Let me say, because of this topic, the most important group that we collaborate with is the AMR Secretariat, which we collaborate with to also improve upon our fight against the menace. So these are my colleagues performing. I think the top left is it's a research that they are doing, I think somewhere along the lake around Akosombo. Below is a picture any farmer doesn't want to see of a farm that had lost the stock. And it's a case that one of my colleagues actually handled. And then that is me on the far right in somebody's residential farm, trying to educate him about antimicrobial resistance during our last, our just ended biosecurity audits. So these are my colleagues that I work with. Dr. Bediakun works in the Greater Accra. She's at the head office. She works in the Greater Accra, Western, Central, and Western North. Dr. Pia is in Akosombo and parts of Volta and Uti region. Dr. Kofi Ntiejakun is in the Eastern region. His office is in Koforidua, and he also handles parts of Volta and Oti region. And then yours truly handle Ashanti and the northern regions. So you can reach us through any of the zonal officers at any of the fisheries offices. You can easily, we are very approachable. You can approach us anywhere, call anybody to get our contacts, and we'll be happy to help you. So to conclude, antimicrobial resistance is a threat to the aquaculture industry, and I really hope we see it. Because it's a very big threat. I don't know how else to put it. Now we have some bacteria that today you culture on the plates and you do the sensitivity test and you find out that there are some antibiotics that are still being used on the market and being sold on the market that are no longer efficient or no longer effective against some of the bacteria that we are finding on your farms and some of the bacteria we are finding that are shown as diseases. And compliance to biosecurity measures is one of the best, cheapest, and the most promising way to reduce disease occurrence on the farms, hence reducing the use of antibiotics. So finally, I'll say again that the vets are available in fisheries and you can reach us anywhere. We are willing to work with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Stanley, on that. We are grateful. We are grateful. I agree with that, biosecurity measures, and of course, best management practices. They will save us a lot of headache in dealing with antimicrobial resistance. Yeah, so before you got your screen sharing, we got a question from one of our participants. He is asking, or he was asking, I don't know whether his question is now answered, but I'll still want to read it so that you can reiterate. Any guidelines on antibiotics use in aquaculture in Ghana? He was asking about any guidelines on antibiotics use in aquaculture. Maybe you can reiterate that. Yeah.
So if you ask for guidelines, there are a lot. There are a lot. For example, if you are along the lake, you are not supposed to use antibiotics, except when you have what we call the sedimentary tanks or ponds, so that the effluent doesn't go into the main lake, all right? Because some wild fish swimming somewhere in the lake should not be exposed to antibiotics when he or she doesn't need it, okay? So that's just one of the guidelines. The other one is also the dosing, which is, if you work with the vets, you know how much to use, which is the dose, and also for how long should you use it. That's also a few of the guidelines. But most of the guidelines, if you work with the vets, will be able to tell you which one you need to apply, okay? Because the holding facilities are different. I can't speak to all of them. That will be another whole presentation, because the guidelines for use in ponds is different from guidelines in use in cages, guidelines in use in tanks. There are so many different. So yes, maybe if you have any issue or if you just want to understand, we can talk later about that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. A quick one before any further question. And so after this webinar, if you have further concerns, you have questions that you want to ask, you can channel all that to fishfarmafrica@gmail.com, fishfarmafrica@gmail.com. And we'll make sure the various experts address those issues and get back to you. So that's a quick reminder on that. Please, the floor is open. We want some contributions, some questions before Professor takes over to tell us what is happening in Nigeria and all that we need to know about antimicrobial resistance. Do I have some? You can type your question in if you don't want to voice it out directly, or you could also unmute yourself and just ask your question. I think that would be great. I'll give ourselves. Yes, please, go ahead.
Yeah, good evening to everyone, and thank you for this presentation. Dr. Stanley, thank you for a wonderful presentation. My name is Samuel Pukuare. I'm also a veterinarian with the University for Development Studies. Doc, I heard you talked about research that is ongoing, but very sorry I missed that part because I was trying to get my network in time. So I don't know if there is currently a research that is particularly related to antibiotic resistance in relation to specific genes determination that you are trying to find, and that is ongoing. Because I know of a colleague who is here in our school who is trying to think of doing a research related to antibiotic resistant gene in aquaculture. I don't know if there is something related to that, or if he could consult you, and then if there is any collaboration that he can look at.
All right, thank you, Doc. Yes, thank you, Doc. So there's one that has been completed. We did the baseline study one, which sought to identify all the pathogens, I mean, viral, ISKNV, and then bacterial pathogens that are on the lake. That study has been published. And so you can have the wide range of the pathogens, okay? The second phase of it has been done. Lab work is ongoing, so it has not been published yet. That's focused on the inland, the ponds and the concrete tanks and the tarpaulins, okay? So that one is also to be published once the lab work is done. Currently, in fact, today I'm from the field. We are also working with Noguchi, trying to identify zoonotic bacteria / antimicrobial resistant bacteria. Okay, so that work is also ongoing. And I have been in talks with, I don't know if I should mention his name, with someone from, I think, plant protection, PPRSD. And he's also intending to look for some of these antimicrobial how do you call it, residues within the environment of fish farms. Okay, so that study is to be done. So quite a few, I admit, has been published, but a lot more are on the way to come.
Okay,
so if you have ideas too, you can also share with us so that
so I think yes, you have set the stage perfectly for me to talk to him so that he will link up, because he is much into the antibiotic. Thank you.
Okay.
I have a question. My name is Precious, and I'm also a fish farmer. So this question might sound very amateurish, but I really wanted to ask, what are your thoughts about like organic remedies for animal resistance against bacteria and all that? Like normally when you're faced with like conditions like that, and then you do some research, you see things like, oh, bitter leaf or this. Like, what are your thoughts about natural remedies for such situations?
Okay, so thank you for the question. We are also exploring the use of phytochemicals, which is what you are mentioning, the bitter leaf, the neem tree. Some have talked about ginger, garlic, pawpaw leaves, quite a number of them, okay? But my thoughts on it, since you asked, is that the research is still ongoing, okay? We are yet to find out how much should be used for how much of fish or how much of water. What is the best way? Should you blend it and mix all of it with water, or you can mix with feed, or you can just put the leaves in the water all that is research that is ongoing. I have personally recommended bitter leaf and neem tree for farmers, and it has worked. But again, the dosing has been per my own, should I say, intuition and my own experience. Okay, so that also works, but it is still at the very experimental stage. I have not yet seen anybody who tried that and lost all of them because of the drugs. I mean, because of the how do you call it, the plants. But I cannot also fully endorse it because it's still at the experimental stage. Yes, there are also probiotics, which some people have begun selling. My thoughts on that is that most of these probiotics are not from Ghana. They come from outside. And you know, probiotics are antibiotics. They are just like yogurts. So you are only importing pathogens from another country to our country, which I think as a fish health unit, if you contact us, my colleagues at the head office would look at it. And then if it's something we can begin to endorse for our use, it can also work. So yeah, those are just my thoughts on it. But for the plants, I know that some use it. I have recommended a few myself and they have worked, but the dosing and the time range has been purely experimental. Thank you.
Thank you too. That was very insightful.
Okay. Thank you very much, Doc, on that. Thank you, participants, for your questions. I would ask one more question to Doc, and then we'll move to Professor Tipribe. Doc, how are you tackling or monitoring?
Yes, can I add something to what was discussed?
Okay, please go ahead before I bring up my question.
Yes. Yeah, I'm from CSRI Water Research Institute. The Aquaculture Research and Development Center in Akusumbo. Yes, just to add to what Dr. Sibri said, the other natural remedies that can also be used. Some are biological entities that can be isolated from the fish, which we call the flow. Bacteriophage, which CSRI Water Research Institute is working on, had been isolated for dealing with issues of minimizing antibiotic use in aquaculture. And this is another thing that can be exploited or used. We also have used some plant extracts, which is working against some of the bacteria that we have in the system. And so these are things that you contact the CSRI Water Research Institute. Some of these remedies can be shared with farmers who may want to try them on their farms without necessarily going in for the AMRs, which is the antimicrobial resistance strains or antimicrobial resistant fish that seems to be in the system, as being asked by one of the participants. I don't know if you heard me or if I was clear enough.
Yes, I think so.
Doc, you got that right?
Yes, please, I did. And
Okay.
I agree with you.
Yeah. Can
I think maybe I also want to say something. That's fine. Please go ahead.
Yes, great. So I actually love the discussion ongoing. And this is the point that I've made from the beginning, that there's the need for us to have a standard treatment. If it's treatment we want to do, if it's a preventive approach we want to use, what is the standard? If I hear from the CSIR, they are talking about they are also doing some work over there, but this work, that evidence must be brought together. So we agree that if you are going phyto, then these are the one with evidence to use to treat this particular condition or bacteria. Yeah. If we don't put it this way, you will see that from this workshop, somebody will say, oh, you can use this. Then before you realize the whole country, people are applying things try and errors to see whether they will get it right. So that's why there's the need for us to develop standard treatment guidelines. When a new evidence comes, you review it. So you train the farmers that if you see these signs, this is how this disease is diagnosed. You can use phyto. If it's a preventive way we want to do, just like immunization in human, there's a guideline for it, which one the country has approved to use. Beyond that, you don't have to use. So I think we should call for the treatment guideline to be developed. I think that's the point we need to do. And somebody should lead this for us. Over.
Yeah. I think just to mention so there's existing treatment guideline for antibiotic use in aquaculture. All right, that is from the OIE or WOA, World Organization for Animal Health. What we will have to look at, I think, is what you're trying to say, if I understood you well, is the phytochemicals. And that one, I agree 100%. We need to be able to look at the evidence that the researchers are bringing, and then we endorse it for use in farms so that we don't have people mixing spices in the water in the name of treating treating bacterial infections. Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Dr. Stanley, I'll come back to you. Maybe for the, okay, who is?
So can I come something?
Okay, briefly, and then we can move on.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Something quick, a quick one. Just a little bit thing with a more OIE's treatment, which was approved, often that we cannot or we will not be able to follow through because of the biosecurity measures that we have on our farms. Most of our farms are not highly technical and highly equipped to be able to judiciously or efficient. So from our predecessors and those that are in the field, Dr. Zida and Co. and those, they have always been warning us as a nation against the use of antibiotics. Though they have been approved by the OIE, doesn't mean that Ghana can fully use. At least I can talk about some West African countries looking at the culture systems that we practice and the lackadaisical attitude of doing things. I don't think we should be encouraging the use of antibiotics on our farms, though that had been approved by the OIE and other organizations. In other countries, the monitoring, surveillance, and regulations and enforcement are in place, and therefore they can afford to use those things in land-hold systems. Here we do most of our fish farming on the lake. So how do people use antibiotics on the lake? In other countries that they have accepted this, example, Egypt, they don't allow fish farming on the lake or on the river. They do most of their fish farming, especially in Abasa and other places, they do it on land. So you can control the use of antibiotics in land-based systems. But here in Ghana and other West African countries, that cannot be stated officially that should be encouraged to be used as far as antibiotics is concerned. And we have farmers on the platform, others are listening. And I don't think it is appropriate for us to say that antibiotics can be used because OIE and other organizations or regulatory organizations encourage its use. I don't think it's good for our country and for our fish farmers, the systems and the practices we have in the country. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. I like the way the discussion is going. We'll come back to it. We'll come back to further discussions. And I'll hold on to my question for now. Dr. Stanley, I'll come back to you. And I would like Professor to tell us what is happening in Nigeria or anything he wants us to know about this topic. And then we'll follow with Dr. Benjamin Kisi. And after that, we'll come back to the discussion. So please listen well and keep your questions down for the next set of discussions. Is Prof with us? Prof, are you still here?
Okay. Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, I'm here.
Thank you very much. Please go ahead with your presentation.
Thank you very much, the organizers of this webinar, the Ghana Aquaculture Association, and the other recognized and respected participants on this platform. I'm coming from an angle of a paper that we've published on AMR, and that's talking about the use of molecular detection of tetracycline resistant gene from bacteria associated with African catfish from one of our locations in Nigeria here in Ogun State. Okay, so coming from the first one, let me come from this. The skin, we were able to look at this fish in the study area. And the skin, the gill, and the intestine of 16 clara fishes, clara grappinus fish, about 5 grams each were taken from the pond of Ijebu-Ode. And we were dissected with blade, and we were able to inoculate them on Sabuna Chigela Ega and this other Ega, AFC methylene blue Ega. Okay. Sorry, I'm having problem. It's not okay. Can you move? The touch screen is not responding here.
Bro, I think you should put it on presentation.
This touch screen is not responding. Okay. Okay. Now, these are the approaches we use to do the work. We check the antimicrobial testability using the Cabidis diffusion method, and the pure colony was identified, and we had this, the PCR also carried out using tetracycline resistant gene marker. So, well, talking about the morphometrics of the fish use, the total length was 26 cm, and with that body weight there, then we were able to identify 5 types of bacterial strains from them. We have the E. coli, Shigella, Salmonella, Rotator species, and Klebsiella. And we discovered that the gills had the highest number of the bacteria, followed by the skin and the intestines having the least of the bacteria. Then the Salmonella had the highest strain of frequency, with Shigella with a low frequency. And then the scientific test showed that the bacteria were sensitive to gentamicin, tarivig, and ciprofloxacin, with a few resistance to other antibiotics. Then talking about molecular detection of tetracycline resistant gene showed that the isolates obtained were resistant to tetracycline antibiotics. So that's the other portion was part of our abstract that we in the publication. So the fish farming generally we have known to enhance food production and also generated more income and good health for people. And aquaculture is concerned with the culture, rearing, and of aquatic organisms under complete human control. It has served as one of the fastest growing food in the world, and with an average annual growth rate of around 8.9%. And what have you there? Thank you. So in Nigerian aquaculture system, this started about 50 years ago, but now currently the production is around 200,435 metric tons, contributing about 24% of domestic fish production. That's according to FAO in 2018, and 80,000 metric tons as at 2018, contributing only 6% of domestic fish production and consumed daily. Okay, then Fish is a generally acceptable animal protein source because of its high nutritive value. And fish products are important, not only from a nutritional point of view, but also in an item, as an item of international trade and foreign exchange for a number of countries in the world. So, talking about diseases, there are many diseases associated with different types of fish, according to Kui et al. In 2009. Occurrence of fish disease is more prevalent in aquaculture management as a result of crowded condition of large population of fish, which causes heavy parasitic infection, disease, and loss of fish. Under global analysis, reports have it that World Bank in 2012 loss in the range of 4.5 million per annum. And disease is now a primary constraint to culture of many aquatic species, impeding both economic and social development in countries. So disease is a condition in living organisms in which normal physiological functions are being impaired due to alteration in the body system. However, healthy fish have adequate resistance against diseases, which infer that they can adapt to reasonable environmental changes and in turn resist diseases. Here we have an array of treatments of antibiotics, and we can see them. Tetracycline use is there, and some other antibiotics. So aquatic bacteria develop resistance genes as a consequence of exposure to antimicrobial agents. Bacteria associated with the skin, gut, and intestinal tract of fish has been studied by many researchers, which deduce that fish can be spoiled from both outer and surface and inner surface of fish. Okay, then fish becomes susceptible to microbial contamination due to their soft tissues and aqueous environment. The infection and cellular damage caused by pathogenic bacteria has increased greatly. And the main route of infection is generally through their skin, gill, and gastrointestinal system. Therefore, the quick annotation of bacterial pathogens and sensitivities to synthetic antibiotics is important for quality declaration to trace bacterial pathogen in the fish species. So in this our study, the research is on sorry, the call was trying to come in. So sensitivity to synthetic antibiotics is important for quality declaration to trace bacterial pathogens in the fish species. So this research is on identifying, isolating associated bacteria with Candidus gariepinus, the sensitivities to synthetic antibiotics, and then the molecular detection of the presence of tetracycline A resistance gene in Candidus gariepinus. Here is the primer and the sequence with me. So I was talking about the water parameters that we looked at during the course of the experiment. The location is a Riwe fish farm in Ogun State, Nigeria here. So we looked at the morphometrics, the total length, standard length, and the body weight of the fish. And here you see the water temperature readings, and then the morphometric analysis that we have there. This is still talking. So then we now have the total mean bacterial count in in the gill, which was 11 CFU per gram, and that of the intestine is there, and the skin. That's on our table 4 of the document. So the lowest bacterial counts were recorded in the intestine, while the highest bacterial count were recorded in the gill. So all the samples collected showed bacterial growth on EMB and Salmonella Shigella. And 48 of the samples gave 382 isolates, 28 E. coli, making 7.3%, 32%, 85 Klebsiella species, 22.25%, then 102 protozoa species, and talking about 26.70%. Then 120 Salmonella, 31.41%, and then the Shigella giving us 12.30%. Yeah, is the mean bacterial count. Then the bacteria in the skin, gill, intestine. So the total number of bacteria samples was this. So we had, as shown in our table 5, so this is our table 5, showing is the distribution, 18 number for E. coli, 95.2%, and then Klebsiella protozoa species, and then we have the total isolation. Then we have to also have the bacteria isolated from the skin of Claris garipinus, and showing this pattern. Then the bacteria isolated from the intestine of the Claris, and this is the pattern we had. The antibiotic susceptibility of 48 bacteria isolates determined this identification methods, and as on the table 8 is showing that where they were susceptible to pevfluzacin, ciprofloxacin, and tarifid. So E. coli was susceptible to chlorphenicol, antitamicin, and was resistant to cestromycin, augmentin, and amoxicillin. Shigella was susceptible to cetrin, chlorphenicol, spafulacin, and gentamicin, including cestromycin, but resistant to amoxicillin and augmentin. So you also see this when Salmonella was showing intermediate response to amoxicillin and resistance to augmentin, but susceptible to cetrin, chlorphenicol, and these other antibiotics. So confirming what we are talking about when it comes to antimicrobial resistant issues. So it's also prevalent here from this study. Thank you. So this is a table showing what I've just presented. Then we did the PCR analysis of the tetracycline gene. So the resistant gene in the bacteria associated with Clara gravidanus had this, when we did the electrophoresis. It's a pity I won't be able to show that electrophoretic plates here, but this is the reflection of what we had on the bandwidth that we had from the tetracycline resistant gene. The electrophoretic, something is not very clear. Please bear with me. Although the paper is online, so people can actually have access to this paper. So in our discussion, we discovered that most bacteria that causes disease in fish are normal inhabitants of aquatic environments, which routinely do not cause a problem, but must be prevented. However, fish can be stressed by temperature changes, poor water quality, transport and handling, making them more susceptible to bacterial infections. So this research work revealed that C. garipinus samples harbored various bacteria in the skin and gill and carried a larger percentage out of the bacteria found in the fish samples. There are several bacteria that are present in gills, skin, and intestine of C. garipinus, including those that are pathogenic and non-pathogenic species. The number flora and opportunistic ones. This study showed that E. coli is found in most of the fishes. And We are trying to compare with some previous works. Some of my work, that's Akinyemi 2012, isolated E. coli from the gill, intestine, and skin of Clericavenus juvenile, and found that the isolated E. coli was gram-negative bacteria. Then another one, Akinyemi Buoro, suggested that stressed fish could be predisposed to bacterial infection in the gills because the gill is for exchange of oxygen and harbor the heavy load of microorganisms in the water. Likewise, this study revealed that the gill of C. garipinus. So this is the citation of the paper, and it's in Applied Tropical Agriculture, Volume 6, Series 1. Okay, then we have the identified acids were multi-resistant to various antibiotics used except for proteus species. Indeed, all bacteria were sensitive to gentamicin. And this corroborates a study by Buquero, which found that all strains of Chlorella scrapinus were sensitive to gentamicin. And this is in agreement with all the Chlorella species tested. So Akinyemi et al. In 2016, one of his publications, observed that there are 8 bacteria isolated from gill, gut, and skin of Chlorella garipinus, and obtained from one of our locations in Nigeria here, Ogun State, Yewa Mata, in Nigeria. And these are the rundown of that particular article. So proteus species is the bacteria that were common to our findings and Akinyemi et al. 2016 work. It was also observed that Morganella morgani, proteus species Pseudomonas, were more sensitive to nitrofuraton with a diameter of this, talking about the inhibitor zone that we measured. And these are the outlook. So furthermore, there is another work from Idogo. Actually, the particular year we worked on the whole length of a river in Nigeria here, which was a Yewa River. And we had these various reports from the work we had there. So these are the various other antimicrobials that were used. And we discovered that they also had resistance to other antibiotics. Thank you. Then there are 3 main types of bacteria found in this particular work, which was also reported by Ekelemu, is one of our documents, one of our papers that was published in 2016. And the bacteria are Pseudomonas, Serratia, and Rhodomonas found are dominantly on the skin. So the scientists told that there are 3 different bacteria isolated from ofloxacin, nitrofuraton, ciprofloxacin. The bacteria isolators were 100% resistant to cefizine and cefuroxime. So the research work has shown that there are 5 bacteria associated with the skin, gills, and intestine of C. garipinus, namely the E. coli, proteus species, Klebsiella, Salmonella, and Shigella. And these bacteria were associated to most of the antibiotics used, while resistant to few antibiotics. All the isolated bacteria are resistant to tetracycline type B. The fish has ability to resist the effect of the antibiotics. This implies that the tetracycline type B cannot be used to treat infection caused by consuming C. garipinus. And here are some of our references in this particular work for this work. So I want to say thank you for listening to me. I will be glad to hear your views and submissions and questions in this presentation. Thank you very much. Sorry for the hitch along the presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Prof. Thank you. We are grateful. Yes, please put all your questions down. We'll come to that and further discussions. But now we want to call on Dr. Benjamin Kisi for the last presentation. And so, Doc, one of the greatest threats to global public health and food security is antimicrobial resistance. In your presentation, would you also tell us how to this links, I mean, we've heard of how there's resistance in aquaculture, in livestock. How is it impacting our food security, food safety, and then transferring it to humans, and so causing public health? Please, over to you, Dr. Kisi, if you are here. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. Great. And maybe an holiday, which many people, there was a problem, people thought it would be on Thursday, but the holiday is today. So I had some slides, I've shared it to the administrator, but because of the time and I could do more of S tempo. So I would move straight away to have the discussion. So I don't spend much time. I promise to use 10 minutes so we can have time for more questions. So most of the things that I initially wanted to make had already been talked about. Is administrator having, okay, as maybe an host now. So I can quickly share my screen.
So you're the host, sir?
Yes, I'm quickly sharing my screen. Please hope you can see.
Yes, please, it's clear now.
Yes, great. So basically, I'm speaking about laboratory testing of animal food products. I'd like to thank the organizers for this webinar. I like the kind of presentations that have come from those who came after me and those who came before me, the speakers. And people we're talking about AMR, we talk about research work, and people ask, what are the standards and all that need to be done? Now, farmers are into business and they want to get customer. What are the farmers producing? They are producing basically food. And food should not turn out to be a poison. And in current times, people are going for food and they end up becoming to take something which would be a poison to themselves, being a food. Now, I'm coming from National Food Safety Laboratory for Animal Health, with the support of Fleming grant, which came from UK and other stakeholders that continue to support it from time to time. We have made the antimicrobial reference laboratory for animal health. So when it comes to issues about antimicrobial resistance, we play a critical role in that, which earlier on Mr. Xavier spoke about. Now, when it comes to other quality, the whole thing that we are talking about, we are looking at from the farm to the fork level. So for aquatic, we are looking at from the water body or from the inland, the various farms, to the time it gets to our table to eat. How safe is our fish as a food? And there are a lot of things that have been shared by previous speakers, and it is more inciting to know that it means there's more work to do. I normally tell everybody that food safety is everyone's business, and farmers have a critical role because they start at the production level. And the issue about antibiotics use was coming in. And I like to re-echo what Mr. Sylvia said, that it's true OIE has standard treatment, but Ghana, we have to look at adapting ours and looking at the current situations as the researcher from CSIR spoke about, so that we could have what standard for everybody and not doing as we so best of food for all of us in that. Now, for laboratory testing, it helps confirm what we suspect and other things we want to do. So from time now, put samples, animal food product are sent to us. Other yesterday's, a farm had an issue, quickly fish had been sent our laboratory to test and see what is happening. And I was happy to see the presentation by Prof from Nigeria. There's normally big samples from the girls, the skin, the intestine, and we go further to pick some from the kidney. And the finding that they had are what we normally see. And for our side, there's a problem that farmers face in Ghana. Drusella has been part of some of the findings that we find with bacteria. Now, good sampling will produce quality lab results, and food safety is becoming a concern to everyone due to the many health issues and development. Because people are going to buy food and they don't buy something that will come and cause harm. They buy something that they need to enjoy and have the benefit of it. Now, currently, we have this facility which, from the onset, Fisheries Commission, we had a grant to support veterinary service in testing for to provide diagnostics in fish health. And with time, another support came in, and it has been made to look at not just fish, but to look at terrestrial and aquatic in the area of food safety. And this facility is aimed. And as my colleague, they don't consult them for advice to doing their own stuff. And recently, that awareness like this came about. Now people are beginning to samples when they find their fish dying or the source of planting. They begin to consult the vet fisheries. So for us, if a farmer should call us and make samples, we quickly look at the location which the samples came from. So the results sent to the fisheries vet to follow up. And sometimes he follows up before the results comes. Now, the service running is we are doing microbiology of all product or animal food products. We are also looking at pathway residues. Currently, we do it in collaboration with Ghana Standard Authority. The good news is that we are on the way of receiving support for the machines to do it inside, so that the place becomes one stop. So that it becomes one stop instead of normally we doing some and send to Ghana Standard Authority, because this is the standard. So we need to stick to having our own, and support in terms of capacity training and logistics are on the way for Ghana to have them. Now, we also do provision of antimicrobial use data. And I was happy Mr. Sylvia spoke about it. Work I've done in poultry, work I've done in piggery, aquatic, we have been part of helping with the biosecurity guidelines. And we have also started an antimicrobial use data, which currently a lot of fish farmers which were recruited for the study are not reporting of anything, but we still know that one way or the other they are using these antimicrobials in the farm. And we are looking at a way to get to know what is happening so we could help them. Now, we also do food safety sampling from slaughter facilities, commercial, retail outlets, and other places. And the good aspect that the fish health unit from time to time had surveillance, and Fleming have also supported a fellow, which is the name of Mr. Eric Soya, which from last year did some work in in fisheries, some selected farms in the region and Greater Accra, and to look at the kind of bacteria and resistance there, which in future webinars, the work will be shared for us to understand the situation in Ghana. Now, the location of the lab happens to be in Accra, Labone, at the veterinary service headquarters. But we have certain labs at Kumasi, Takrady, and Pontamale. And Mr. Sylvia did talk about certain sites being rolled on to also help in the area of diagnostics in aquatic, to help in the area of AMR. And currently, this lab has been accredited, and by God's grace, whatever we do provides international standard. So these are the kind of equipment that have been provided by Fleming, and still supporting us to do more. Now, what are the benefits for us to test? We might not know what we may be taking in, and it's good. I always tell people that critical attention needs to go to the aquatic sector, because for aquaculture, when there's one mistake, it affects multitude of organisms. This is the fish. And when it comes to our market, a lot of people in Ghana, every day, we find a way of consuming something of fish. So when there's a big issue, it could affect many people. And even the workers, those who are working around this environment, what are they picking from? That is it becomes a big issue. And there's zoonotic diseases in aquatic sector too, which from I think in future, Dr. Stanley and some of us will throw more light on it. In all these things, when we continue to test and see what's happening, we could inform policies, we could let the fishes vet to know what to get farmers educated or be trained on. And then they will be having safety be assured and the business will continue. Because constantly, if nothing is being done and antimicrobial resistance, as been described by Dr. Stanley, continues, farmers will not be ready to put their investment because there is a time whereby when there's a problem and the fish is vet diagnosed, medication and you're losing all your stocks. If medication are available, they're expensive and nobody wants to go to a business take a loss. Now, all these things, just to know that is that type of antibiotic in Ghana as a standard treatment protocol, we want to be using antibiotics. It let us know which antibiotics to use, or to advise that no measures that people should stop using antibiotics. As similar work as done in Doma in the area of poultry, and also to let the public know that fine, the product provided by this farm in terms of a fish farm is the best, and it's something that they could use. And in the end, the end game is for farmers to have their business running. So laboratory testing is key, and many a time, farmers do not know that about it. And I believe I made a proposal to association to look at it as association. They could come together and say, okay, we were going to make it part of ourselves. Laboratory cost, you can ask the professor for Nigeria. But one association of farmers come together and say from time to time, we'll be assessing services. Together with Fisheries Commission, we can be a sit down to look at the charges that will be so minimum or to be affordable and cheaper for farmers to constantly be assessing laboratory testing. So they will be assured of what is happening in their farm. Sometimes people will say, oh, we only have to test when we have a disease. No, not always. So we have realized Fisheries Commission every year do their best to have what we call surveillance, and all this is needed. Now, food safety, a little bit information for everybody to know. Currently, foodborne infections, we are having more than 2 million deaths per year, that's according to CDC, and normally from diarrhea caused by contaminated food and water each year. And we already know found in water bodies. So if there's a water contamination with the issues of illegal mining and all those things, we are going to have bigger issues. And so if somebody takes them, some bacteria have gotten some residues to also be gotten. Now, when we talk about food safety, it's always the bacteria alone. Now, if the fish is containing antibiotic residue, yield to us is not safe once it passes the allowable threshold. Two, if it's containing certain residues like mercury, all diseases are going to be of concern. So this is what the laboratory said to be looking at to inform farmers so that policies in terms of settle their farms and activities near their farms can be regulated to help them to stay in business. And for the zoonosis aspect I've spoken about, that is some from animals that affect humans. And basically, it has been said that currently 60% of our human diseases are coming from the animal. And we have had issues of monkeypox, lizard fever, or name it. And even anthrax, we just came in person. And for, I always say that for aquatic, if there's a zoonotic disease, we should have a bigger blow. It's not just going to affect livelihood, but the more dangerous than the arrest because of the number of people that depend on food product that come from aquatic, with the revelation given by Dr. Stanley with the statistics. Now, antimicrobial resistance, it has been spoken, but there's a key thing that people should know, that they have targeted that by 2050, if we do not take care, the kind of lives that we will be losing will be so much greater. And if you look at the numbers, Africa is followed by Asia. Talk about the number of people that will be losing every year. And whereby people get sick, drugs are not working. You go to hospitals and the doctors are looking at you. And currently, issues of this nature, we are pushing what we call One Health concept, or using a One Health approach, whereby even today we started a workshop on Monday, and today we ended looking at environmental being brought strongly on board, the human sector and the how do you call it, the animal sector, which have aquatic play a key role in looking at all these effects so that we could solve a lot of issues and to save human lives. In conclusion, we can't expect safety into our food supply. Instead, we should work on building an organizational culture focused on driving improvement in food safety. Thank you. God bless.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kisi. That was brief and very loaded, very loaded. Our time is almost up, but I will open the floor up for some few questions, maybe one or two, and some discussions. I think I'm going to start with myself because I had a pending question, after which audience allowed to come in. And so we've discussed a lot also have been shared from our experts. I want to tackle the issue of how we introduce microbials into our aquaculture environment. And research from other countries have shown that the feed industry, the fish feed industry, they also use microbials to preserve the feed so that it can last longer or to prolong the shelf life. And so to Dr. Stanley from the Fisheries Commission, how are you monitoring that? Or it has not happened with our feed producers in Ghana? That's what I want to know.
Okay, thank you very much. To be honest with you, we don't have any residue monitoring plan as we speak with regards to the feed and also the fish that is going to our plates. However, there are plans to begin to do that. So there's a project that we've applied for. Hopefully, we will be able to begin to monitor the residues. And I think that will also help. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. There's a question in the chat room. It says, is it safe to use feces from pigs in aquaculture? Is it safe to use feces from pigs in aquaculture?
It's a big no. And I say that to even cover the offals and intestines of other animals, including poultry, that are used in aquaculture. It's a very, very big no. I know people have begun using those as supplementary feed to support their feed, but the risk involved is too high. And if your biosecurity measures are serious, you would know that it's a big, big, big no. Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have any question on the floor? Okay, somebody wants to ask something. Okay, go ahead, please.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm so grateful for the various presenters. They have done very good justice to their topics. But I want to find out whether we have any public health interventional measures so that we'll be able to deal with the issue of AMR in Africa or West Africa or Ghana in particular. If you have any public health interventional measures, packages for the prevention of AMR. Thank you very much.
I believe this question could go to any of the presenters.
Okay,
yes.
So let me help. So there's an action plan on AMR, and there's a AMR national policy, which people can get it online. It was launched by the president, and currently is going, and the action plan is going a review. And initially, as Mr. Xavier said, a lot of attention was put on that of the human. It came to animal a little bit, environment was a little bit. So the next round, that's why I was calling that the association should join. It will be called also to help make an input to tackle the issue. So AMR is very broad. A lot of activities are ongoing, but in the next phase that look at the action plan, a lot of attention now will be look at the environment, look at the aquatic side of it. And currently, we have done the biosecurity guidelines for aquatic. We are yet to implement and roll it out, which Dr. Stanley will let you know that there'll be training, and so that people now stick to standard. even the offals and the physics issue, all this, the biosecurity guidelines state it. And very when we do grading of farms, people would be graded as low and they will be having issues, and loss enforcement will come in. We are in Africa, and there is a social cultural attitude. So in coming up with issues of that, though we know the real case, we want to build data to support what we do. So there's ongoing work to get more laboratory work, surveillance data on it too. We want to make an economic case for AMR in each sectors, so that when it comes to your farmers and let you know that, okay, this is how much you spend in doing your production from day one to harvesting. But if you stop this attitude, this is what you are going to save, then you will be ready to do so. They don't mind in the poultry sector, how was done, and they are bought into the idea, and there's no need for government to go there with police or enforcers to push them to do it. So we are also looking at things that we are doing that to be sustainable, not a project that will be done once, and after some years we need to fall on for money. And in all this, they're looking at locally tailored solutions. So let's just get ready. There's a plan for it, action plan, and there's a policy.
Yeah, if I may, Dr. Boma,
yes,
I would also, I would add that there's the farmer field school that was done in the poultry sector and has so much success. We intend to begin one in aquaculture, and the pilot phase we are targeting Ashanti region and then Eastern region. So a lot of the farms have been selected, and hopefully that farmer field school will be done. We hope that the compliance and the participation is good enough so that we can have good results to show for people to also begin to practice it. Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much. I will welcome.
Thank you.
One last question, and then, okay, I think somebody's hand is up. Go ahead, please. One last question, and then, okay. Who is
Hello?
talking? Yes, please, go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to find out, I overheard the last presenter actually projected that they are testing antimicrobial residues in a number of samples in conjunction with the help of Ghana Standards Authority. And from the list, I saw a number of items, milk, egg, and all that. I wanted to know whether they've done that, they've been able to determine the residues in fish. Because for now, I know it is a major issue.
Thank you very much. So the presentation was for all animal food products, but because of the audience being from the aquatic area, that's why I was addressing issues of that. So that's the focus of the lab, and a lot of work needs to be done. Well, for the last 5 years, 10 years, residue testing wasn't a concern to Ghana. I think the most of the residual work that was being done was honey. I mean, that one last week, Friday, the European Union called for a meeting for us to get our things better. From Friday, we're going to get our residue monitoring plan for honey. Though EU's residue monitoring plan allows for all types of animal products, even including fish. Now we want to better the honey, which has been done for so many years, 6 or 7 years, and look at the standard set, and now come back to Ghana and look at our standard. We've had issues with equipment, and we've had issues with resources. So we keep on using the standards by the EU, whilst we ourselves as a country need to know what we are having and set a standard and see, are we lower than the EU one, or we are more? If we are more, then we bring it, we meet all the stakeholders, farmers. Okay, this is what we are doing. We set it a little bit lower. We meet it, then we are setting it to meet that standard. So that's what. So a lot of work is now that attention is going there, and it involves a lot of money. When it comes to residue monitoring, it's a big issue. But now government and international attention have come to that, and support is now being channeled to that area.
Okay, thank you very much. This is how far time will allow us, but is it Dr. Apiadudu? Oh, I think your hand was up. Did you want to say something? is, I can see the name as Kuku Apiadudu. Please, did you want to say something?
Yes, please. I had a comment,
Okay.
but I think time
No,
is against us. So
no, it's fine. I saw it before I said that. So you can pass your comment briefly. It's welcome. Then we can close. Yeah.
Yeah, my comment would have been a reaction to an earlier comment concerning the research and then how to go about usage of the antimicrobials in areas like the lake. Yeah, but okay, so just to make it brief, I think I wanted to make it clear that this discussion is not encouraging antimicrobial use. Neither is it trying to discourage antimicrobial use. This discussion, for me, was responsible use of antimicrobials to control antimicrobial resistance. But I think there were comments suggesting that this session was encouraging the use of antibiotics, which I think was not the case. And I also believe that for those who are researching, who have evidence that certain things can help in infections, I think they should try and collaborate with the regulators of the aquaculture industry, rather than maybe openly inviting farmers to come and use something that the regulators may not be aware of. What if farmers consult the regulators and the regulators genuinely, out of ignorance, say that we do not know this? Then we are going to cause some confusion in the system. So it's an appeal. Whoever has something genuine that can help, please collaborate with the regulators, collaborate with the competent authorities. Let us work together as a network so that whatever comes out can be sustainable or can be used responsibly. I think that's what I have to say for now. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. That was very useful. We would have missed it if I didn't allow you. So we are grateful for your contributions. And so my cherished audience, this is how far time will allow us. This program, this webinar was brought to you by the Ghana Aquaculture Association, the major organization promoting the interest of fish farmers in Ghana. And it was in partnership with fishfarmafrica.com. And you can visit us on www.fishfarmafrica.com. This presentation was also recorded. The webinar was recorded, and it's going to be available upon request. And it's also going to be available on the Fish Farm Africa website, okay? So when you go there, you will find it. And if you request, make a personal request, we will make it available to you. All the presentations, all the slides from all our expertise will be made available. Okay, and it's also in partnership with the University of Environment and Sustainable Development. Encourage your wards, those about to write WASI, to come to our campus and to register and study Bachelor of Science in Aquaculture, so that together we need more hands on deck. So let them come, let the youth, let the graduates come and then and join in our discussion and tackling of some of these sensitive issues. Thanks to our experts. Thanks to Dr. Stanley for your presentation. Thanks to Prof for your presentation. Thanks to Dr. Kisi for your presentation. And thanks to Mr. Xavier and the whole Secretariat. We appreciate it and we are taking note. In fact, we've taken note of every bit that you said. I can't summarize it all. As I said, it will be available to all who request and then on our website at fishfarmafrica.com. But briefly, I think that from all the presentations, we can see that as aquaculture is intensifying and we have less money to build infrastructure to accommodate the fish, the capacity we are growing, and so there is disease outbreak. And this has led to the use or adoption of microbials or antibiotics to solve this issue. And so the issue of environment is coming in, biosecurity is coming in, and best management practices. And with this, if we tackle biosecurity, best management practices, and our environment around our aquaculture facilities and our water bodies, will be able to solve this issue of antimicrobial load, and then we don't need to go and reach out to the antibiotics. In all this, we need to collate our data. We need to collate our data so that we can design specific standard treatment and guidelines. And so from all the sources, from the universities, from the policymakers, from our secretariats, we should put all data together so that we can make specific standards and treatment guidelines so that we can have healthy food for the healthy people. And we can also meet international standards, even as we are hoping to boost aquaculture production to the point that we can export. Like our last speaker said, the EU standards, can we meet it as far as antimicrobial resistance is concerned? So this is my brief summary of all that we've talked about. I believe that discussions will go on backstage at our Fish Farm Africa website, and you are welcome to send an email to fishfarmafrica@gmail.com for any further questions or discussions, contributions you want to make. Thank you very much, and we are grateful to have you all. I believe that you have a wonderful evening and a healthy fish to eat, and stay free from antimicrobial resistance. Thank you very much.